to take us on our whirlwind tour of temperature perception, and that's thermoregulation. So this is how we regulate our body temperature. So does anyone think of two strategies that animals use to regulate body temperature? A clue is in this picture with two different strategies represented here. Warm-blooded and cold-blooded. That's right. Give this guy a mint leaf. So you have a warm-blooded animal and cold-blooded animal. So the fancy term for warm-blooded, like this mouse, is endothermy. So this is mammals and birds. The fancy term for cold-blooded is ectothermy, cold-blooded. So essentially, one group of animals regulates their body temperature, and another group doesn't really regulate their temperature directly. They're kind of at the mercy of whatever the ambient levels might be. And although cold-blooded animals are very successful, incredibly successful, we tend to focus a little bit more perhaps on the endothermy just because that's what human beings are. So this is the basic pathways of what goes on in a human being. It starts at the periphery, so your skin will sense environmental temperature. You also have neurons that innervate the internal organs that will sense the temperature of the organs as well as the blood. And then they'll send signals to the hypothalamus, which will sort of integrate this information, decide whether or not you're too hot or too cold, and initiate heating or cooling mechanisms that I'll go over in the next slide. And so if you get too cold, if you're in a really cold temperature, obviously you need to warm yourself up a little more. Does anyone know any strategies that you could use to warm yourself up?
Shivering.
Shivering, yeah, how did you guess? There are more.
Goosebumps.
Goosebumps, yeah, why goosebumps? Anyone have any idea why something like this might warm you up?
The hair stands up to capture more heat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good. So
That's a good one.
that's actually what goosebumps are. So in a lot of hairier animals, it works maybe a little better than humans because we don't really have all that much hair. Some people hairier than others, but
And actually our hair is rudimentary, so we kind of we have it from monkeys, but we're not using it for thermoregulation per se, right?
yeah. So instead of like really keeping you too warm, you just kind of see these goosebumps. Any other mechanisms you can think of to warm up? Babies have a special organ.
The old guys used to have that mechanism, not anymore.
Maybe some of you still have it.
Yeah, adults have a little bit of it. Baby fat, has anyone heard of baby fat? Brown adipose tissue is actually thermogenic. It creates heat by a mitochondrial mechanism. So that's very important for infants and also small rodents. Adult humans don't have so much of it. Some people are lucky enough to have a little extra, and they tend to be a little leaner because they're burning more calories. But another big one that no one mentioned is vasoconstriction. So your blood actually plays a huge role in thermoregulation. So by constricting blood flow and by either pulling it from the surface and decreasing the size of those vessels, you can limit heat loss from the blood. And as someone said, goosebumps.
Yeah, so it's called pilar erection.
Yeah.
Pilar erection.
So, on the flip side, can anyone think of any mechanisms used to cool down in temperature outside today? Yes. Sweat, yes. Anyone else?
Stay in the shade.
Stay in the shade, that is also good. When drink lots of fluids. Yeah.
In certain animals with big ears, they open up their throat.
Exactly.
Open up their ears, okay, yeah? So what does that do? Why does opening your ears make them cool?
Apparently they keep themselves in
Any idea why?
they're big.
What if I said there's a lot of vasculature in here? A lot of veins.
Expand. They dissipate.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can pump this warm blood up through your big ears, and then it can lose heat to the outside world. And the toucan does kind of a similar thing with its bill. Actually, they've recently discovered that it's a thermoregulatory kind of organ itself, so the toucan can stay warm or stay cool by losing heat through its bill. And that's all through infrared imaging, which we'll get to play around with a little bit later. So vasodilation and also turning off heating mechanisms is important. So you don't want to have your baby fat producing heat while you're trying to cool down, and you don't want to start shivering while you cool down. So if you overheat to a deadly amount, you're not going to be moving a whole lot in an effort to try to cool yourself down. And also body modification. But I'm sure a lot of you guys, like I am, are pretty good at sweating, but not all animals are so good. So does anyone know of any other mechanisms that are used by other animals to cool down?
Panting.
Panting, yeah. So you're good. You studied this thermoregulation stuff. So panting, dog panting. Any others?
Licking themselves.
Liquids?
That's
Exactly.
right. I did not expect you to get that, but yes, licking
Oh, I
yourself.
thought you were like
No. Did you know about the kangaroo before?
I was watching something and they showed the kangaroo that they are now like ears and then licking themselves. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, so if you can't sweat, you can just put the sweat on with your mouth, I guess, and apparently it works. So give it a shot at home. Yeah, so there are lots of pros to being endothermic. I'm sure we all think it's pretty great. It allows us to function at very low temperatures, to live at Arctic conditions, whereas a snake or something would be hibernating and not functional at those conditions. It also allows us to maintain a stable internal body temperature, which is nice for maintaining rates of reactions and things. But there are some significant downsides to being a warm-blooded animal as well. And one is that it's energetically expensive. So you need to eat a lot of calories to maintain your body temperature, so you have to burn a lot of calories, kind of like a stove. And it also makes you a little bit more susceptible to diseases because there's a lot of bacteria and viruses that have evolved to target warm-blooded animals. And so we have evolved a more advanced immune system to combat that than what's found in cold-blooded animals. But there are some groups of animals that try to make use of both strategies, both warm-blooded and cold-blooded strategies, to get the best of both worlds. And one is the animal here that we use in our lab, the 13-line ground squirrel. Does anyone know what's so special about this, or what type of animals would use cold-blooded and warm-blooded strategies?
Animals that hibernate?
Animals that hibernate, yes. So these are hibernators. So during the summertime, these guys are active like this. They're very hot by the infrared image. They're very hungry. They run around. You see them on the prairies, on golf courses, digging holes. But come winter, these guys will curl up in a ball and they'll hibernate for 6 to 8 months. And you can keep them. We actually keep them in a 4-degree, so a refrigerator essentially. And they look like this. It's just a cold ball. It looks dead, more or less. And during this time, they drop their metabolic rate pretty dramatically. They reduce their breathing rate, their heart rate, and their core body temperature all the way down to the outside temperature. And this can be as low as the temperature of a refrigerator. And so doing this helps reduce those energetic costs that would otherwise be needed to maintain their body temperature.